Hey guys, this is Felipe for runningonce.com, and today I'm making part 2 of my moving up series, and we're gonna be playing 50 and out today. So the first things that we're gonna adjust is that we're gonna be playing a little bit tighter from middle position and the cutoff, because I just expect the button to be playing a little bit more aggressive, the blinds to be defending a little bit wider, although the difference might not be large enough to make a very big difference. So we'll see. We'll see as we go along. King gate here. I think I'm gonna lead. The hand's not good enough to check call, but we have a lot of backdoor here. We like a 7, a 9, a spade, and 2 overcards. So I think it's a good hand to lead here. And I think that players at this stakes will probably not be defending enough versus leads. Like on this board, they're just gonna fold too much that I think I can like auto profit with my lead here. Tens versus UTG, I'm gonna flat. I'm also opening a little bit larger from the cutoff because my range is gonna be a little bit tighter, but not a huge difference. I'm gonna pause the video just a second, guys. I'm back. Just needed to check if the audio was being recorded by the microphone. The tens here, he bet 50 cents on the flop, and we both called. And now once he bets bigger on this turn and gets called, I think we have a pretty easy fold here. This would be an okay spot to raise bluff, but he bets so huge here. If he had bet like 2.75, I think I would go for it. I don't have too many worse hands in my range than ace high at this point when the once the 8 hits, and with the 6 blocker and the equity that the 6 gives me, I think it's a great candidate to do it. But once he bets that huge, I just think that he's not going to be very likely to fold the turn. So I prefer to just give up there. On the small blind, I'll still be opening just very wide because I just think that they're still not likely to be defending enough at 50 and now. So I'll be opening a very wide range here. It's gonna bet twice here with the a6. Try to get called down by a king queen type hand. King jack now. And given our kicker is the 9 now, I think that it's we can do this pretty confidently. If the 6 was playing, then I think that sometimes we're still losing to like ace 7 and ace 8 that might check back the flop. But on that river, I think that we're only losing to king queen really. So that's a weird raise by him. I think that if I have the ace of spades, I might flat the flop. With the jack of spades, I think it's a little too weak. I'm not blocking the nut flush draw, which might be in his range. I'm gonna check call 7-9 suited here. Especially with the backdoor flush, I think is a... Once it goes check check, I see the button taking a stab here pretty often. So I think the hand plays pretty well. And also we get to see this type of action and not put any more money in the pot. Once we check, we get relative position in the sense that we're gonna see what the small blind's gonna do before, after the button stab. And that's another positive point of check calling there. At higher stakes though, this might be a better c bet because people's ranges are gonna be like this guy's range, for example, is gonna be probably way too loose and just miss the board way too much. And he's probably gonna be taking stab with hands that he shouldn't. So I think we can see him like stabbing like ace deuce of spades here or that kind of thing. So I think that it's probably best to check call this here than at the higher stakes maybe. Just because of how the button's gonna have a wider range and misplay his range. Six eight suited here is kind of a loose peel, but none of them have a full stack, so just gonna assume they're more likely to be a recreational player. And so this becomes a very possible call in position. If it's both rags with strong ranges, then this becomes a losing play, I think. King queen, pretty good c bet here with our backdoor flush draw and 2 overs. And backdoor straight draws. Eights, I'm gonna be... I think I'm gonna flat. And have a pretty easy check fold on this flop. King 9 off is a good candidate to 4-bet here because it's one that I think I can't call with. It's funny because I was watching... I think I made it a little too big, I know. I was watching the Sauce video right now, and he like snap calls King 9 off versus button versus blinds 3 bets at 10-20. But I still think that I can't call this type of hand profitably. This is a pretty great board to see bet. We're blocking some of his continuing hands with the king. A lot of the hands that are gonna 3-bet and flat a 4-bet with A lot of the hands that are gonna three bet and flat of four bet are gonna be suited broadways, and the ones that are gonna continue on this board are usually the ones with like either a straight draw or like a backdoor flush and or with the flush draw. So like having the king of spades here is gonna make a huge difference if his range is pretty well defined as like suited broadways mostly. And so I think this is a pretty good C bet. If we have a hand like king of clubs, queen of diamonds, we're blocking two hands that are gonna be folding every time. So we're blocking king queen of diamonds and king queen of clubs, king jack of diamonds, queen jack of clubs. Although queen jack of clubs might still call because of the gutter, but once his range is gonna have so many suited hands, having a bad blocker or a good blocker here makes a pretty good difference since it's gonna be so few combos of each. Since it's only four suited combos of each hand. Ace king, I'm gonna check back and call some turns with our nut no pair. And now with top pair, we're gonna raise here. Especially when he bets a little bit smaller. I think he's gonna call with every king. Probably he's gonna call turn and call river. Sometimes he'll call with a 9 or a straight draw. Since I don't expect people limping to be very good at these stakes, I'm just gonna isolate, just gonna raise and put pressure on their weak range. I think at higher stakes I'll be more aware that some players are good players using a well balanced and limping strategy. So I have to be more cautious with the hands that I'm gonna be raising pre-flop. I think we're winning somewhat often here. I'm gonna 3-bet this hand. I also kind of expect people to be folding to 3-bets a little too much at these stakes. I had a student who told me like I was going through his database and he showed me that a ton of players had like a 80% fold to 3-bet percentage at like 25 and now, so I think we can get away with 3-betting a lot of hands. This sixes here, I bet really small versus this guy. It's kind of an exploitative play just for protection, basically. He's like a short stack and very likely to be a fish. So I'm just gonna go ahead and try to take down the pot, given that he's gonna miss the board very often, and a lot of his misses are gonna have quite a lot of equity versus me, since he can have like if he's got like Jack 8, for example, he has the Jack D8 and the Queen as outs, which is a ton of equity versus me. So I think it's a great play to bet like 1/3 of the pot and just protect your hand and take it down right there and have like a exploitable range here by betting bigger for value and smaller as a bluff. This is something that I talk a lot with my students, like versus weaker players in super dry boards, you can like have extremely exploitable ranges and like be betting very small with bluffs or like protection hands and betting big for value because the range is gonna be pretty inelastic. If they don't hit, they're gonna fold, and if they hit, they're gonna call. It's the size doesn't really matter to them on like this type of board. I'm gonna flat eight here. There's a fish in the big blind probably playing from the iPhone. God, I miss having so many fish at the tables. Good times. Pretty easy check call on the flop, I think. Gonna check back queens here. Versus the big blind, I usually see bet here because there's way more hands that he can be check calling. Like, he's gonna have way more combos of 9x and 6x and straight draws as well, like 8-10 off he could defend. But versus the small blind, he's not gonna have too many combos that are worse that are gonna call, and his ace-x are gonna be a higher part of his range. I think I can check raise here as a bluff, and I think it can work pretty well. I think that at my stakes I'm not gonna do it because I can't wrap too many 10x. I'm gonna start betting here. I can't wrap too many 10x because I'm not gonna flat too many 10x from the small blind versus the middle position. But here, once he like checks back the turn and bets the river, his range is pretty capped to like ace king is pretty much the best hand he can have. And I put him in a very tough spot. I think if he's not like really thinking about my range pre-flop, which I don't think players at this stakes are gonna be doing very well. And I can still wrap like sixes and fours and ace 10 suited, which are two combos, jack 10 suited, maybe queen 10 suited or something like that, given the big blind was a fish as well. King 3 here, I'm just gonna bet because of my gutter. If it was like a deuce, king deuce of spades, I would check fold the flop. Given I have a gutter, I think I can see bet. And I think I can two barrel here because I don't think he's gonna have too many fives in his range. And I just make him fold a lot of overcards with a heart in his range. Like, he's gonna call flop with like king queen with a heart, king jack with a heart, ace jack with a heart, ace queen with a heart, and I think he might fold a lot of those on the turn. So this is a pretty kind of exploitative double barrel that I think is gonna work often enough at this stakes. So as you can see, the main difference so far from 200 and now, which is where I make most of my videos, to this stakes, is that I'm gonna be making way more exploitative plays. Like this here, my range is definitely imbalanced towards bluffs when I use all my eights combos, and I probably would have done the same with nines, for example, maybe sevens as well. So I'm gonna have way more bluffs than value in this spot once I'm wrapping only sixes, fours, jack 10 suited, 10 9 suited, and ace 10 suited basically. It's gonna be way more combos of bluffs than it should be, and he should have a pretty easy call with an ace versus my range, my actual range. But I just think that they won't call enough with an ace, and that I can get away with making an exploitative play like this and exploit the fact that they're gonna be folding way too much of their range on the river. So yeah, one of the things that I think you can do a lot at this stakes is take more advantage of capped ranges, knowing that people aren't gonna like make up for the fact that their range is capped by calling a lot with weaker hands when you put pressure on them. Ace king off here I think is a pretty easy flat pre-flop because first of all the big blind seems to be a fish and UTG seems to be a rag, so Those are two reasons to do it. Ace King here, I think I'm gonna call again because I just think it's weird because he's not supposed to have like too many. He's not supposed to have too many 8x in his range, and I feel like people at this stakes are gonna play more cautious with like overpairs. If he's got jacks, I see a lot of players like checking the turn or and so I think it polarizes his range a little too much. Like some people will two barrel tens plus here for value, but a lot of players will pot control on the flop or the turn. So I think I think I can call again on the turn, given how much I think his range is going to be polarized. The ace four here that I see bet four ways. Where is the hand? The ace four of hearts. I see bet four ways here because I have the backdoor nut flush draw. I have some backdoor straights. The board is pretty dry, and the guy that flatted here there is the one that's supposed to have the strongest range. He's playing on an iPad, which makes him likely to be weak and have a wider range and miss this board more often. I have a blocker to ace king as well, so I'm gonna be barreling like a five, a deuce, any heart. I could barrel a queen here because I make him fold all the pocket pairs, but because he's likely to be a weaker player, he's just gonna have way more combos than king off king x than most rags here, because he's gonna be playing king 10 off pre-flop, king 7 suited, and so that makes this a pretty bad barrel on the turn, I think. But if you're against a rag that only gonna call pre-flop like king queen suited, king jack suited, and like king 10 suited is the worst hand that he can have here, and like no offsuit combos pretty much, then you can barrel this pretty confidently, knowing that they're gonna fold their pocket pairs often enough. Like the pocket pair is gonna be a big enough part of the range for a barrel to show an instant profit here. Once the king hits the river, and I think that I can't really have too many bluffs, I think I prefer check calling and maybe letting him decide to bluff with like ace 10 off or 8-9 suited or something. I just think that the most likely is the hands that I'm trying to get called when I bet here are like sevens, eights, nines, tens, and I think those bet the turn too often. So I think that check calling is better because of that, basically. In the same way that he had ace five, he could just have played ace seven like that and decide to bluff on a king, or like queen jack off spades, for example. Versus a $2 bet here, I think I have to call. He can have some straight draws that I beat, like 5-6. Some floats sometimes, like queen jack of hearts or something. And I still have like 6 outs versus a 7 or pocket pairs, and 3 outs versus a king. This is another loose spiel that I mostly don't do at 200 an hour and 500 an hour. There's an overbet here, pretty easy fold, I think. I'm gonna pause the video real quick, guys, because it's starting to rain here, and I'm not sure that it's gonna be bad for the audio. because of the sound of the rain. So I'll be right back. Hey guys, I'm back again. Turns out the rain isn't a problem at all. So we're gonna continue to record. Basically, I opened the button, got called by the small blind and the big blind. The board was 4-3 deuce rainbow. I had pocket eights. I c-bet, got called by both. The turn was a jack. I double barreled. The small blind folds and the big blind calls. And on the river, the pot had like $16, and I decided to. The river was a queen, and I just decided that I was winning the hand way too often to check back, and that if I bet like 1/4 of the pot, I could get called, which would be pretty reasonable versus like a fish if he had like a not a full stack and like an iPhone thing indicating that he might be a weaker player. I think it would have been much better because I just think I'm not gonna get called often enough by a 4x in that spot versus a good rag, and he might like check raise as a bluff and that kind of thing. So I think it was too thin of a bet on the river there. But versus a fish, I think it's a pretty mandatory value bet because the queen and jack aren't gonna hit his range at all. They're not gonna change much except for when he makes two pair, and he's just gonna have way too many 4x and like 3-5 and 3-6 and ace deuce and all sorts of pair plus draws on the flop that are gonna be tempted to call once we bet like 1/4 of the pot on the river. So I think that my play was good versus a fish, but bad versus the very bad versus a rag and good versus a fish, but versus an average guy with a full stack that might be a rag. I think it's probably going to be a losing play on average. This is a hand that I fold usually, and that I think you can open here at 50 and L. Pretty good barreling turn for us. We block the nuts and we have an open ender. He's probably gonna fold most 6x's and 5x's, and also some ace highs. On this river, I think we're gonna have enough hands that are gonna be weaker to bluff. Basically, hard combos like queen jack of hearts and stuff. They're gonna be good to bluff here if he checks. I think this hand might be a little too good here to turn into a bluff. Threes here, I just see bet because he's playing on an iPad. Versus a regular, I'm not gonna see bet this board because it's gonna hit his small blind flatting range too often. Gonna flat sevens. Just check fold here 3 ways. 10-9 here. I think it's pretty standard, not much to talk about. Gonna see bet this. As you can see, I'm just doing some kind of like theoretically bad plays, like c betting with no equity and stuff. And it's basically because I can at 50 NL because people are playing too exploitable. And so it's good to show you guys that side of things. Like here, for example, I just expect him to fold a ton of his range here on this board, and we have some backdoors. So I think c betting is fine. And I might check fold at higher stakes. Ace 10 here versus this guy. Just gonna bet 3 streets. I like to bet 55% of the pot on this flop with my entire range usually. Just because it's a pretty dry flop and he's gonna have a lot of hands that have a hard time continuing. It goes against what I was saying earlier of like having a exploitable range here and betting bigger for value and weaker as a bluff, but that's mostly versus fish, and I don't know yet that this guy is a fish, although he doesn't have a full stack, so he might be. So maybe I should have bet a little bit bigger, because if this guy is a fish, for example, I'm gonna get 3 streets of value out of ace 3 off, for example, which is definitely gonna be in his range pre-flop. But if he's a reg, he's not gonna have enough weaker ace x that I can just like bomb flop turn and river so easily. So if I get called here, I think the versus fish should bet almost spot on the turn and almost spot on the river, just because I expect him to have like pretty much all the ace 3 to ace 9 off combos. And I don't think they're gonna fold trips ever. Ten-9 suited's good enough to call here versus UTG. Especially because he's a Brazilian. And Brazilians don't know how to play poker. Just kidding, guys. Because as you know, I am Brazilian. And I love my country and my people. Vamos! Gonna isolate the queen deuce suited here. It's a very weak hand, but from the button I think it's fine versus this limper, who's gonna play probably pretty weak post flop. And I think I'm gonna check back and bet turn and river for value. Just give him a chance to bluff with like king 10 off or something like that. Given it's a hand that it's hard to get 3 suits of value of worse from worse. 10-9 here, I think it's just a call on the river. He's probably value betting most over pairs, but he can also have all the sets and 6-7 suited and stuff. And ace 2 suited. And he probably should be folding with his overpairs once I raise river. So I'm not sure. Versus a fish, I would definitely raise here, because I think they're gonna have a much tougher time folding even a hand as weak as like ace 10 to a river raise. But he had a full stack and could be a reg, so I just decided to flat here. Another important thing is that he can't have worse 2 pair than mine. Maybe 5-4 suited would be the only combo, but he's likely to be folding even that from UTG. I think I'm gonna code for bet King Jack suited here. Not sure about this play because I don't know how people are reacting to this kind of situation yet at 50 NL. But King Jack suited is a pretty good looking hand. And I think it's somewhat likely that people won't be defending enough. At higher stakes now, people are like flatting these 4 bets in position with a ton of hands, which makes it tougher to 4-bet bluff as liberally. But here I think that people are going to be much more on the jam or fold kind of decision, and probably be folding a little too much, I think. Gonna see bet small here versus the fish. It's an exploitable play. Just make him fold his missed hands. A7 suited here. My plan is to basically get called by ace high, and that's why I bet so small. And it's another example of one of those exploitative plays that that are like level 1. Like I want to get called, I bet small, and I want to make people fold, I bet big, and that kind of thing. In this situation, I'm gonna be flatting those small pocket pairs from the small blind, which I also don't do at higher stakes because people are squeezing more from the big blind if you're doing that, and it's a little tougher also to get implied odds when you hit your hand because people don't overplay hands as much post flop and that kind of thing. And so I think we can profit by calling any pocket pair on the small blind, basically. I would see bet this if it was spades. Or if it was heads up, I would probably see bet as well. King 5 suited, I'll complete with those spot odds. Nines is a hand that I'm probably gonna bet flop and check behind on most turns. I want to protect versus overcards and get a little bit of value versus like 8s and 6s, basically. 8s, 8, 6s, 4s, and like ace queen high call sometimes. And I want to protect versus like king queen, ace jack, and stuff. I'm just gonna bet twice here. There's a lot of draws, and I think that I can get called by a queen twice, a lot, depending on the run out, of course. Just because there are enough draws here. Gonna see bet threes for protection. Basically to take down the pot now because I can't call any turns and rivers basically. And it's gonna be hard to get to showdown winning with this hand. I might just check back and give up at higher stakes as well, because if people's range for flatting the small blind is a little stronger, it becomes hard to profit with this bet, I think. King 6 suited, pretty standard check call on the flop. I think it feels like I'm folding too much if I fold this turn. Like, it's a little too much at the top of my range, so it's kind of exploitable. He could be bluffing profitably here, but I think I'm just gonna fold because I think people are gonna be a little less aggressive at this stakes and to see bet three way on that board and continue to barrel that quickly and strong. I think it's just gonna be way too often a strong hand here, like king queen plus. And when he is bluffing, I think he's usually gonna have a lot of equity, like with flush draws, probably, and maybe queen jack. But I don't think he's doing that with like ace queen and ace jack, for example, very often. It's been a while since I've practiced my isolating strategy because we don't see as many limps in higher stakes nowadays. But from what I remember from the times that I played lower stakes, you can just isolate a ton and not worry too much because people are just gonna limp call with a very weak range and check fold the flop way too often. This is kind of a tough spot to be able to make him fold anything. But I think I'm gonna do it just to try to make him fold better draws because I have six high. Like he can, because he seems like a weaker player. He can just check call turn with any 9x combo, any 10x, like 10-4 of spades or king 9, or even a lot of 6x like me, and maybe clubs. And he could still maybe fold a hand like 5-4 on the river or 6-7, although I don't think he's gonna fold 6-7. But because I have like the worst possible hand here with 6 high, I think it's fine to bluff. He check raises. I don't expect him to have too many 7x in his range. So I think he can have some draws like 10-9 and some stone cold bluffs sometimes, like king jack or something. I see some people doing that kind of thing. So now I don't think there's too much of a reason to bet. I think his range is pretty polarized. He's either giving up with like king jack or something, or he could have 10-9, which is a hand that we could get some value from. Yeah, maybe I can bet the turn, I think. Now I just have to check down. Yeah, like ace 4 suited. Just gonna have a lot of hands like that that are random bluffs on the flop. Jacks, I think I can 4-bet here versus a weaker player. I think that although their jamming range isn't gonna be, I'm not gonna be very ahead of his jamming range. I just feel like weaker players never fold to 4-bet. They flat their entire range. Like they 3-bet sevens and they're gonna definitely call a 4-bet. If they 3-bet like ace jack off, they're definitely gonna call a 4-bet and see a flop. They want to see a flop. So I think we can four bet for a value with jacks. And on this flop, I think the best place to check call and do some pot control. And once he snap checks the turn, I think I'm gonna go for the exploitative play of betting, block betting the river. Try to get called by nines, eights, ace 10, 10 9. Maybe I could bet even a little higher. I think nines is a very frequent hand here. Yeah, I think I could have bet like 11.50, maybe 12.50. This hand is usually a little too weak, but people are gonna be making enough mistakes post flop that I think I can defend it versus some in raise. I could be wrong though. I don't know how well the rags are playing at the stakes since I haven't played in it in a very long time. So maybe I'm playing a little looser than I should. I don't know. Gonna check call with ace queen here. I think it's a good play because I let him like take stabs with pretty weak hands like king four of clubs, for example, that are gonna fold to my c bet, and I have like the nut no pair on the flop with the nut flush draw, and it's good to like be able to have a flush once you take that kind of line once in a while. So I think this is a good hand to do that. I decided to check call the turn because once he checks back the flop, he's not gonna have a nine. He's not gonna have any good draws probably. So he's either on the turn, he's either gonna have an ace or a total miss, like I said, like queen four of clubs or something. And so I prefer to just check and let him bet for me, and then I can call, and then he'll value bet the river with the weaker ace. And because he bets so small and looks so fishy, I'm gonna raise for value here. Basically to get called by all the weaker ace hacks that I think are definitely gonna be back calling, like ace seven and like ace three or that kind of thing. So by check calling the turn, I think that get I might get even a little more value from ace x, and I can also get some value from air, which is what I think he had here. You know, like a 5-4 of clubs hand or queen six of diamonds or something, because he bet folded so quickly on the river. So I got like two streets of value from hands that I would get zero streets of value. The same thing is gonna go with the queen six here. I'm gonna check call, and because it's a hand I can't really get three streets of value, I just gonna let him stab with some weak stuff and pot control. He checks so quickly on the turn that I think I'm gonna go for a thin value here, because I think he would bet. He would think about it with air on a king. Think about the possibility of bluffing his hand. And also think about it with the king. So I thought I was gonna see like a jack pretty often here. I can't really have too many bluffs here at this point. So, like, theoretically, I think I should bet smaller than that on the river, but how people aren't hand reading as well, I think I can bet a little bit bigger. Okay, so I think I'm gonna wrap up the video now, guys. I'll see you guys next time. Take care.